Template making. Ask anybody who builds guitars, or anything that requires templates, to be honest, and they'll tell you that template making is the most tedious and time consuming but important job you can really do. It's not fun, but you need them, and they need to be good. But there are a few little cheats and kind of good ways to get around certain bits and reduce your workload making templates. I need to make a template for this, which is a ES335 style body, which in this case is symmetrical. So there's quite a nice little handy cheat for doing symmetrical body designs, which I'm going to do for this one. I also need to have a template for some chambering in it, and quite a few other bits and pieces. Personally, I like to use thicker templates because they give me a bit more leeway with a router bit. I like to use a minimum of 9mm MDF usually, 12mm ideally, or I've actually got some templates that are nearly an inch thick and they just work out better for my needs. I'm going to be making this master template from 6mm MDF, which is a good one to work with initially because it's thinner. It takes a lot less working to get the shape right. So first of all, we're going to get this drawing transferred onto here. To do that with a symmetrical design, you can do a template that's just half of it and then flip it over and you're guaranteed a perfect match. But rather than using the centre line, because that gives you a little bit at either end that can go horribly wrong, I like to offset by an inch or so just to give me a bit of leeway. So I'm going to mark on this one. So to transfer your drawing onto your template material, you can use a few different methods. I like to do my master drawings on tracing paper, so I could take a copy of this with another piece of tracing paper, use spray adhesive or PVA glue or Pritt stick and stick it down. I'm not going to do that because I don't really like it. It gets messy. The tracing paper tends to kind of ruffle up at the edges whilst sanding and it can make it a bit difficult to see the line. Another way to do it is to just draw directly onto the template material, or the way I'm going to do it, I am a bit of a hoarder. I salvage things thinking I'm going to use it at some point. So in a previous life I used a lot of invoice books and receipt books which come with a piece of carbon paper, and I eked out the life of every bit of carbon paper, meaning that the extra sheet you got in each book ended up being unused. So I've saved a load of those, and to do this I can just put the carbon paper underneath my tracing paper, mark around the line that I've got with, use a pencil, a pen, or even just any hard point that's not too sharp so it doesn't damage the original drawing. That will leave a mark on the template material that I can work to that isn't going to have any issues with the sander. I can just work straight to that line. So I'm going to put a few sheets under here and then we'll transfer that across. So now you've got one half marked, you can take it to the bandsaw, crack out the jigsaw, use a big old coping saw, whatever works to get that shape cut out. So at this point, you've sanded it round, you've got a perfectly usable template, but a couple of extra steps will make your life a lot easier in the long run. If you run your finger around the edge, unless you've sanded it perfectly, which if you have, well done. I want to know how, because I'm not that good. You'll feel lumps and bumps, and it won't be completely even. So the best thing to do then is to get a combination of straight edges and a little cheat you can use. If you know roughly the radius of a curve that you're going to be sanding, chances are you've got radius sanding blocks for fretboards. You can put one of those on its end and use that, which will help even it out. As soon as this feels smooth, it's a nice even curve with no lumps and bumps, it's going to be a lot better to route round, because you're going to have a hell of a lot less sanding to do later on. And this is where using something like 6mm thick MDF or a thinner template to start with is a lot easier, because there's a lot less material to remove. I should have mentioned beforehand, I did check that this edge here was nice and straight, so that means that I can use it as my reference edge. Obviously use a straight edge against it and just make sure. Sheets of MDF tend to come pre-cut with very straight edges, but always worth a double check. However, a cheeky little cheat if you need to cut a straight edge is you can actually use an existing straight edge and a router. So for instance, if this wasn't perfectly level and this edge was, I could fasten this here and use a bearing guided router bit to run along here, the bearing along this face, and cut this face, which would give me then a perfectly straight edge. I will be using that method on a couple of bits of this template when I get to it. It just makes life a little bit easier. So we've now got a finished half template. As I say, this body shape is going to be symmetrical, so we want the same shape both sides. To ensure that I get that, I'm going to line this up with this centre line that I've just marked onto my template material. I've measured to make sure I've got enough space for the template to sit inside the edges here. I'll draw around it this way, then I'll flip it over, I'll line up my centre line again, I'll draw around this side. Then I'll repeat the first steps of making this template, so I'll cut it out, sand it close. I don't need to worry about getting the edges perfectly sanded on this, because I'm going to use this template here, take it to the router table again, and use a bearing cutter like I did with this straight face here, and just cut out all the way around one side, flip my template back to the other side, and route out again. So we've got the body templates cut out, and I've taken some time to just draw out, and I've actually cut out obviously roughly the neck template. So this is just to get the taper right and to start with the tenon for the join. So what I usually do is a 43mm nut, and for the taper I measure 53mm at the 12th fret. Now they usually go down to about 42 and 52, but I like to leave a little bit of extra space just for sanding and things. With that taper, usually most string spacings that you get on average bridges will be within the kind of 52 to 54ish millimeters, which if you've got the string spacing here leaves you anywhere between 3 and 5 millimeters on the outside of your strings between the edge of the fretboard and the E strings. So obviously if you have a wider spaced bridge, you want a slightly wider taper. There's complicated maths you can do to figure it out, but what I like to do is measure it, draw it out, measure it there. So on your drawings, centre line, measure your scale length, whatever width nut you want, whatever width string spacing you've got, draw your 2E's, and then you can figure out exactly how much space you need either side. To cut this out, obviously you've got to do some perfectly straight lines. So as I did with the centre block in the body, I'm just going to use existing straight line and run it along the router, and that'll give me my perfect straight lines on this template, which then when I transfer it to my working template, which I will probably add the headstock on, just so I've got a bit of extra space there and I don't have to grab another template to do the headstock. It'll also mean that I can use that to measure out my neck blank and know exactly how long I need that to be. I forgot what I was saying. Oh yeah, I'll have nice straight edges. All good. And that's templates.